This is the first tutorial for NX for ME2761. In this tutorial I'm going to cover the basics of creating parts in an assembly. The actual homework assignment is on Blackboard. So I've got NX9 opened up here. I'm going to go ahead and just start creating parts. I'm going to make two parts, an extruded part and a revolved part. So I'm going to create new. I'm going to be working in inches. I just want to create a model as opposed to an assembly or any of these other things. I need to save it somewhere. Whatever you do, don't save it here. That causes problems. So you want to save it somewhere like on your desktop. So I'm going to put it on the desktop in NX, and I'm just going to call it tutorial 1, part 1. Okay. As far as the model, I'm going to call this just part 1. Well, everything looks good. I'm going to click OK. Alright, so this first part's going to be an extruded part. So I first need to create a sketch. If you'll note in NX9 it starts in this defaults to this curve thing. That's pretty useless. I don't know why it does that. All this stuff is available in whenever you're making a sketch. So if you're wondering where all the buttons go, click home. That's probably where you want to start. So I'm going to start by creating a sketch up here in the upper left. I'm going to pick the XY plane and then hit OK. I'm going to start by making a circular part that's going to be extruded, that's going to have some bolt holes through it. So I'm going to click here at the center. I'm going to bring this out to a 2-inch diameter. Then I'm going to put a hole pattern in this thing. So there's a couple different ways to do it. You could do a line and then put a circle there and then revolve it. Or you could put a circle out here and then put different points on it. I think probably the revolving feature is probably the quickest. So I'm going to put a line starting at the center. I'm going to come up here probably an inch is too far, so let's do 0.75. 90 is fine. So I've got a line. That's going to locate the first hole in this bolt pattern. So I'm going to draw a circle there. So I'm going to pick the circle. I'm going to bring it out. Let's go 125. That looks too small for this part. 0.25. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and delete the 1/8 inch hole. In case I'm hitting escape to clear out whatever it's done, so I can get back to that. Okay, so checking my constraints, note that it put a 0.75 there, which is from that, and then a 0, which is the left-right on it, which is what it's supposed to be. So what I want to do, I want to revolve this around, or revolve the feature. One thing I'm going to go ahead and take care of is this line. So whenever I try to do the extrude later, it's going to try to auto-select this line. So I can actually keep NX from trying to do anything like that with this line. All I need to do is highlight it, right-click, and then do convert to reference. And then that line it's still there. I can still change the dimensions on it. It's just not going to try to extrude or revolve it or anything like that. So what I want to do now is revolve this pattern. Let's just do 6 holes on this 0.75 inch radius pattern. So to do that, up here in the sketch tools, if you click down a little bit, you're going to see the different patterns. What I want to select is pattern curve. So I'm going to pick the curve that I want to pattern, which is just a circle here. It's circular, so I need to specify the center point. That's what it's prompting for next. So I'm going to click inferred point and just click the origin, and now it's happy. Note that it puts a bunch of them up there. It just started with 12 and 30. So I want 6. I want 360, so I need to divide 360 divided by 6, which is 60. And I've got my bolt pattern. Okay, so it's just a quick instance sketch pattern feature, which is pretty handy to know. So I've got the basic geometry of the part I want for this. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and finish the sketch, and I'm going to extrude this part to get a 3D part. So I've set it to let me select curves. Depending on how you have your NX set up, or if it's set up initially, it'll try to automatically figure out what to extrude. You can kind of change this by, if you right click, you can see all the different options. So connected curves, it really doesn't do anything because there's all these curves are individual. There's no connection. But if you've got a really complicated sketch with lots of fillets and chamfers built into it, that automatically chains around it, so you don't have to sit there and click everything. I could do some other options here. Probably single and connected is the most useful. So I'm just going to do single for this and just go through picking all of them. So you can see I picked that one and it already extruded it. I'm going to go ahead and click all 6 of them, and I've got the basic geometry. I'm going to change the thickness of this to something that looks right. Let's do 0.25. That looks good. So note for Boolean, it's inferred, which is going to create a new part. I can unite geometry, I can subtract, I can intersect. Inferred, though, generally if you're just extruding like a whole 3D part, that gets it right. If you're subtracting, it gets it right. If you need to do anything past that, you have to manually set this to what you're looking for. So draft, I can actually set this to a draft angle if I need to, if I'm doing something that's cast. So I'm just going to go ahead and OK, and I've got my first part. I'm going to go ahead and put chamfer on this just as an example. So let me do chamfer. Pick the edge. That looks good. That's a 32nd. And then I want to go ahead and do an edge blend or a fillet. Here, it's going to be the same radius. So that's just a basic, simple extruded part. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a revolved type part. So this is going to be a part that locates on this other one, so it's in the same folder. I'm just going to call this part 2. And model inches, okay. So I need to go back to home, start a sketch, XY, everything looks good. Okay. So I'm going to draw kind of a peg with a flange that connects to this thing. It's going to have the same bolt circle, and it kind of looks similar, but it's going to have an extension on it. So I'm going to use this as a revolved part, so I'm going to start with a line. I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to come up, since that was 2 inches diameter, I want to do 1 inch. And then I want to do another line. Let's do 0.25 over. And then I want to come down. Let's go 0.5, yeah. Scroll in a bit, and then let's just go 2 inches. Okay, I need to get this thing back to home. So note, if I start getting close to that, it picks up that constraint over there and snaps it down to that link, which is what I want. And I want to go ahead and bring it back. All right, I've got my loop of curves here. I'm just going to go ahead and revolve this now. That's pretty much what I need, so I'm going to finish it. I'm going to revolve it. Again, it's so this is actually set to infer curves. So if I click this, it's going to do all of them. I'm going to cancel that, go back to revolve, and I can set that back to what I have for extrude, which is single curve. I could do connected curves for this since there's a chain of them, and that works. Or I could go back to revolve. I could do my single curve and pick every one of them. Actually, I don't know what it's doing right now. Let me cancel that out. That was weird. Let me try that again. So, single curve. Well, that's not working. So I'm going to try something different. Revolve. I'll just set it to connected curves. That's easier. And now it's got the whole thing. Okay, so I need to set a vector that it's going to revolve about. This is going to be x-axis for this. If I did it about y, it looked completely not what I want to do. And if I try to revolve about z, weird things are going to happen. So I want to revolve about the x-axis. So I need to pick that vector. I'm just going to click inferred vector. That gives me the little 3 axes here I can pick from. I want to do that one. And then I need a revolve point. If I revolve around here, it looks different than if I'm going to revolve around here. What I want to do is revolve around here. So do inferred point. So let me pick the origin. I'll right click and see what's going on. So point let's see, oh, there we go. I want to do, it was set to cursor location. That's bad. I don't want to do that. So drop down, I wanted to do an inferred point, and then it should let me pick. What is it doing? All right. And point. There we go. I saw it for a second. Let me scroll in a bit. The origin. There we go. I don't know why that was so hard. And now Boolean none. Okay. So that's a simple revolve part. I need to go ahead and put that pattern in. So to do that, I'm going to create another sketch. I'm going to create it back here on this surface. And I need that same bolt pattern. So I'm going to show a little bit different way of doing that. So I'm going to draw a circle. So let me get that line first, actually. So I went, I can't remember what I did. Was it 0.75? I think so, yeah. So that's that line. I want to convert that to a reference real quick. I have to escape out first. I'm going to put that circle in. Okay, and instead of revolving the curve, I'm going to actually revolve the feature. So I'm going to finish this sketch. I'm going to then go ahead and extrude through. So I'm going to pick that curve. Note that it's trying to extrude it out as a peg. I want to subtract it. So if I set the distance, so right now it's going 0.25 this way. If I zero it out and set it to 0.25 the other way, it will figure out that I want to, should figure out I'm going to subtract it. Well, it didn't, so I want to click reverse direction, and that takes care of it for me. So the inferreds, it shows subtract now, so by moving it the other way, it's not going to extrude this inside of the part. It's basically going to cut that part away from the part. So that's what I want. I could just tell it to do that with subtract, but the inferred got it right. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I've got the hole. So what I want to do now is actually array this feature. The tool is change names in NX9, so a pattern feature is what you're looking for if you don't know where that's at. So pattern feature, select feature to pattern. I select the feature of that extruded hole. And so I need to pick so all sorts of crazy options here, which is kind of interesting. You can do some crazy stuff if you need to. Circular, that's what I want. I need to pick the vector again, so that one. I need to do the origin point, so that one. I don't know why it was easier to pick that time. 660, that's what I want. Okay, so same thing, different process. Alright, so that's pretty much the other part I wanted to create, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I'm going to get into the assembly stuff. So what I'm going to do is File, New, Assembly instead of Model, and just leave it Assembly 1. That's fine, keep it in inches. Okay, so since I have these parts open still, I can load these. If I'm trying to add a part that doesn't exist in the assembly, I can just click Open here. So what I'm going to do is start with the first part. I'm going to position, so there's lots of options here. If you just want to put something down and then move it in a convenient spot, you put it with move. If you want to just set something down based on the origin of the part, you can use that. You can select origin, or you can do constraints. So the second part I'll set with constraints. This one I'm just going to put with origin, that's fine, and then apply, and then there it is. So I'm going to go do the second part. This one I want to position with constraints, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And so now it opens up the assembly constraints dialog. This will allow me to basically put the constraints in the component before I add it, which is pretty nice feature of NX actually. So there's lots of different ways you could constrain this. What I'm going to do, since I've got circular parts, I'm going to use a concentric constraint first. So concentric, I need to come down to the component window, and the rotating and the other moving around sketching type functions work the same in this little window as they do as the main window. I want to get to that, and I want to pick that. So I've got those two things selected. Note nothing happened. You can't see anything. You see the constraint there, but nothing's moved around. You need to hit OK, and then bam, it's there. Note that it's not lined up. Nothing about that concentric is going to line these circles up. So what I can do is, since I have that one constraint in there, I do want to be able to move this relative to this one based on that constraint. But the first thing I need to do, if I start trying to rotate this part, it's probably going to rotate this one too, is I actually need to fix this part. So to add a constraint to the assembly, I'm just going to do assembly constraints, and then I'm going to go fix, and I'm going to click that part, and then it's fixed. That means it's basically welded to the ground. It's not going to move, it's not going to rotate. So now I can move this component, and it's going to keep this concentric constraint always. It's always going to try to maintain that, but it's going to let me move the part within the degrees of freedom that offers, which is very nice. There's some programs that don't do this. They don't keep the constraints constantly in check whenever you're moving stuff. Inventor, I know, is really bad at that. I don't know about SolidWorks. It's probably better than Inventor at that, but Inventor is pretty terrible at it. NX is actually great at it. So I'm going to do move components. I want to move this to get it lined up. I'm going to click this little XYZ here in the move components dialog. This gives me all the move handles. So this lets me move it on its degrees of freedom. I can't move it in Y because that concentric constraint prevents it. I can't move it in Z because it prevents it. I should be able to move it in X. I don't know why it's not letting me. Well, it will let me rotate it though. So rotating it, I want to try to get it closer. So note that I've got it closer. So now all I need to do, I'm going to go ahead and OK on that, and then I should be able to just pop a concentric in there, and then those things will always be lined up. So now there really shouldn't be any degrees of freedom between these parts. They're pretty well locked together at this point in time. So that's basic constraints. And again, if I go to move this thing, it's probably not going to let me do anything with it. So grab that, put the handles up, and yeah, it's just, oh, sorry, wrong one. Let me try that again. Move components. That one's fixed. Obviously I can't move it. So here, yeah, it's not letting me do anything, just like it's supposed to. So yeah, that's fixed in there now, and those components are connected. So that's just basics of assembly constraints. So most of the stuff's covered in the 4th IDE 20 tutorial. The video tutorial, and the purpose for this first assignment is basically just to make sure everybody can do this before we move on to the more interesting things. Next time is going to be motion simulation, and we basically have to have things assembled like this in order to start a motion simulation. Everything has to be kind of placed where it's supposed to go, and if you set the constraints up right, most of them will actually map over to the motion simulation. So I can kind of move some of these. If I had a degree of freedom, I can move these, but it's not physically based. The motion simulation is actually physically based. So that's what we'll do next time. The assignment's posted on Blackboard. It basically covers doing an extruded, a revolve part, a chamfer, an edge blend, a fixed constraint, and a concentric constraint, which are all done in this video tutorial. That's it for now. Thanks.